Hey, good morning, everybody. I think my panel's still getting mic'd up, so I'll start with a few opening remarks. I don't think I realized we were having a smaller panel, but good to hear more from them. So our session today, by the way, I'm Jeremy Grant. I'm Managing Director with the Chertoff Group. We're a global advisory firm helping clients across the intersection of security, finance, business, and government. And I'm real happy to be here today as your moderator. Our topic is using cyber hygiene programs to defend against insider threats and external adversaries. We've got a great lineup today featuring, who will shortly be up here, two folks, Guy Cavallo, Deputy CIO at the Small Business Administration, and Dominic Cussatt, Executive Director for Enterprise Cybersecurity Strategy at Department of Veterans Affairs. It's a great topic to be kicking off today, particularly given how well General Tuhill just did in framing the topic at hand. And in fact, I think the last comment from the audience was focusing on the fundamentals. We're really doing the basic blocking and tackling to protect ourselves in cyberspace. And we'll be talking more about the progress we're making there today and the work that we still have at hand. Because while we made a lot of progress under General Tuhill's leadership and that of the previous administration, we really have a lot more to do. I really like the way that Greg framed this in his opening remarks. As the title of the session suggests, government is still just starting to get the right sorts of controls in place in order to address both insider threats as well as external adversaries. Every major breach of the last few years, think Manning, think Snowden, think OPM, has driven significant executive branch actions and responses, with new policies and initiatives being launched to address material cyber weaknesses. And yet, despite all the good effort over the last few years, we're still not able to say with a straight face that we're secure. In fact, we still have some basics that we should be following when it comes to cyber hygiene that are woefully and inconsistently implemented across agencies. Now, I know General Tuhill's White House colleague, Michael Daniel, in an interview last week, exit interview, was talking about challenges in the topic of cyber hygiene, and he had a quote that stood out to me. He said, "This is the story of cybersecurity writ large. Why is it so hard to get people to do what is actually a fairly simple thing?" So if I can ask our panelists to come up, have them introduce themselves real quick, and I'd actually like to ask each of them, why is it so hard to get people to do what seems to be a fairly simple thing? Why is that the case?
So he went too far over.
50%
You want me on this side?
So Dominic, you want to start today?
Sure. Okay. It sounds like I'm hot. So good morning. My name is Dominic Cussatt. I'm the Executive Director for Enterprise Cybersecurity Strategy at Department of Veterans Affairs. And prior to that, I was in DoD CISO's office for 12 years. So regarding the question, I think when it comes to basic cybersecurity hygiene, it's just a matter of we just can't seem to drive it over the goal line because we're so distracted by the crisis of the day, and perhaps also trying to lean forward into innovative technologies, and that's good, but we can't lose sight on the basics. So I think it's really important we make a commitment. And in light of General Tuhill's comments on senior leadership, they need to make the commitment that they're not going to accept the risk anymore for this this hygiene that we're overlooking.
Thanks.
Good morning. Hi, folks. My name is Dan Jacobs. I currently am the Cybersecurity Program Coordinator for the GSA, all of 3 weeks now. Feeling great. Prior to that, I was a Senior Security Architect for the Department of State. It's a fantastic question. I think it's complex, like most cybersecurity topics we have are. But I would just posit that the problem is one of our own making. Especially from a small and micro agency perspective, we're very good at creating legislation, policy, and turning around and saying we need to enforce this, make it happen, especially with what we were talking about, what Dominic mentioned, the flavor du jour. Oh, this bad thing over here happened. Let's make sure that we never allow that to happen again. So we're very good at telling people what to do and making it happen, but what we're not very good at is following up with those organizations and saying, oh, by the way, I understand that you only have a staff of 14 people. Could you possibly keep up with all of these laws and regulations and directives that I'm giving you? We never asked that because if we did, we know the answer would be an unequivocally no. We can't. We can't possibly keep up with all this. And yet we still continue to have this notion that every single organization in the federal space is going to have their own IT shops that are fully staffed, fully funded, and fully able to provide not only those organizations' requirements, but also all of the legislative and security directives that we bring down on them. It's a recipe for disaster, and I'm not sure why we continue to do it.
Yes, good morning. I'm Guy Cavallo, the Deputy CIO at SBA, who has even a shorter term than us. I'm on week 3 now, and I was at TSA for 2 years, and I was at Microsoft Government for 9 years. One reason I came to the conference today was to try to talk about the common part. If we look at CDM and cyber hygiene language as being the magic solution, I'll give you some examples from my government travels, and I've visited probably well over 100 government agencies in my career. How about finding in the CFO's directory of a major government agency a spreadsheet entitled Financial Systems Passwords? Now, when I actually went and opened it, because it was not password protected, it was not encrypted, I found it was much more than that. It had for every financial system, it had the system admin rights and what that username was, along with the password. So with that spreadsheet, you could sign into the financial system, make $1 million payment as the CFO, and then authorize it as the deputy CFO. So again, cyber hygiene language isn't going to fix that. We have to be smarter on how we use it. I'll give you another example. Federal agency that's in Office 365 now, account names are 8 characters long. Now, why would an account name be 8 characters long? Anybody remember Nobel in the 90s? That's where things were 8 characters long. So if you're carrying over security practices like that from the 90s, how are you protecting your infrastructure today? And I'll give you one last one. Windows 10, PIV enabled. Should we use a PIV client designed for Windows XP on this new Windows 10 platform? Or should we use the native PIV enabling software that's built into the operating system? Well, guess what? Let's use the XP version of PIV software. What I see with that is that, again, I'm not a CISO, I'm representing the CIO side. The CISOs and the security officers need to be involved in the engineering effort. Your job cannot just be to scan what somebody built. You need to be an active participant. And again, use some common sense. If it was built for XP, then you shouldn't use it. And those of you running Windows 7, you got less than 3 years to get off of it. Where are your plans? And what are you moving to? You're going to move to Windows 8 when Windows 10 is already out? Again, these are things that we have to do better from an engineering and an operational standpoint to make sure that the CDM programs and the cyber hygiene has a great platform to run on.
Thanks. Those passwords to the financial systems, you remember any of them? Sorry. Yeah, it's the name of the spreadsheet, thanks. Terrifying story. So, against that backdrop, look, Greg did a great job framing out what he thinks the next administration should be doing. All of you obviously have years of experience on the front lines. If you were the new Greg, since it looks like we're going to have somebody new in there, what would your top 2 or 3 priorities be? Who wants to start?
Sure, I'll take a crack. I agreed with the imperative to implement CDM. I mean, that gets us from what we used to call at DoD the notion of a credit and forget it. You implement your baseline and then you move on to the next system, but really continuous monitoring is going to get us to the point where we can get into continuous authorization of our systems and make us more proactive rather than reactive, waiting for something to happen before we pay attention to it.
Great question. Excuse me. I have the 4 things that the general outlined, and I'm in a complete agreement. I'd love to be able to say quite simply, I do exactly what he said. It's a very easy. Yeah. There you go. But if we could get a little more kinetic, I think there are some key technologies and key things that we can do. And by the way, I'm not an advocate of a technology for every problem. I don't believe that's the case. But I believe that there are some key technologies that can that have the ability to be able to spread across the public sector writ large. We're not talking just Fed, just .gov, but also state and local municipalities. Just like to introduce for a second the concept of enterprise as a service. One of the problems that I alluded to earlier is that every single organization is responsible for not only satisfying all their IT, but also satisfying all the directives and laws and regulations that we're very, very good at shoving down their throats, but we're not very good at paying for. So what if we picked 5 common services, 5 things that every organization is going to need? Identity access, collaborative software, the transport to get there, web services in and out. What if we could just pick, and storage is the 5th, what if we could just pick 5 and say, everybody needs these 5, so we're going to do this best in class, best at business. All of you can still handle what you do, but we're going to take care of the legwork on these big 5, and we're going to secure them in a best of business way. What if we could do that? I think there's a lot of power in that, and we can do that from a .gov perspective. I think we ought to.
Very good. I'm a firm believer of put your money on the table. If this is an initiative and this is a priority, we have to fund it properly. But then we already are seeing that funding it properly isn't just the end point. We need to know where we're going with this as a solution. I see government agencies just throwing tools, throwing money, even if you have the money, throwing it. This next tool is going to be the magic elixir that's going to solve all my security needs. But that financial spreadsheet's still there on the directory. And it's more than that. I'd like to see us do exactly what you were saying, more of a guidance and not necessarily dictating the tools to get there. If we know we have to prevent certain types of attacks, and maybe we've already invested millions in a product and a program, and the staff is trained on it, that it works very well, to then be dictated, switch out that product to this other one that does exactly the same thing. We don't need that. We need the direction of how do we need to get there. We need the money to do it, and we need the staffing. And I'm not even, the other area that'd be interesting to jump into is shadow IT. Does anybody here with shadow IT believe that your shadow IT organization has better security controls than you do? And the answer is no, they don't. They don't invest in it. They're very business centric. We've got to, and this is where I talk about putting money where your mouth is. Shadow IT funding has to go to the CIO to be able to enforce these security roles.
So let me pick up on something that Dan was talking about the capabilities of agencies to actually do this well. Richard McKinney, who's the CIO of the Transportation Department, is a great line that he's been talking about for a few years, noting you can bolt an airbag onto a 72 Mustang if you really need to, but it's not a very easy thing to do. It's not really pretty, nor is it a particularly effective way to get to the objective of having a safe automobile. Yeah, that's what we're often trying to do in cyber and government today. We're trying to take these outdated, ancient legacy systems, really on an agency-by-agency basis that they're maintaining, in many cases not even core to mission, and then trying to bolt on security, trying to glue that airbag onto the old Mustang. I'd like to ask the panel, do you agree with this characterization, and do you think part of the push towards cyber hygiene is realizing we need to start shifting to more modern, securable architectures and solutions?
Okay, I'll start off on that. So one of the big issues we have at Department of Veterans Affairs is medical devices. And that's comparable to anything that's in the Internet of Things. But we have a lot of old software and technologies supporting medical devices that are, and the technology is proprietary to the vendors that produce those products. So security was probably good enough at the time when those were produced. But now that we're so interconnected and everything has an IP address, we really are taking a hard look in VA at securing those medical devices to make sure that the care we provide our veterans is reliable. What I really think we need to do is we have very close the government shouldn't be reinventing the wheel on this. We need to have really close partnerships with our vendors and see what we can do to leverage industry-wide respected certifications that are already there for these devices, and then work with industry to update them if we don't think they're adequate to protect the information. Agree, it's all about the information, and whatever information's passing through those products, we need to be collaborative and work with industry to make sure that the certifications and the standards they're using in industry already by perhaps independent certification authorities make sure that rises to the level of what we need in government for anything, whether it be medical devices, weapon systems, training simulators, HVAC, whatever. But my point is government shouldn't be reinventing the wheel on that. We need to work with industry and leverage whatever we can that's there.
Yeah, I think it's a great analogy. I was part of an organization at one point where we had the backing, C-level backing of a group of folks who were genuinely interested in securing the systems that we had. But we all have those legacy systems, right? They may exist on this umpteen-year-old box that's sitting underneath someone's desk, and God forbid anyone actually touch it, because then the entire thing falls down. And this box and its data may get compromised 1 to n amount of times, but there's just no way, there's almost nobody on the planet that can fix this thing. We'd have to bring in specialized programmers that are billing $400 to $500 an hour in order to make this happen, and it's better to just leave it alone. In this organization, and I'll try to wrap this up very quickly. In this organization, the answer was, okay, fine, throw it in the DMZ. I don't care. It's not going to compromise the integrity of the rest of the data. Throw it in the DMZ, and of course, then people's heads exploded. But that's one example of how you can begin to address systems like this, right? I have a 72 Mustang, it doesn't have airbags, the law says I have to have an airbag. Okay, so it's not mine anymore. Throw it in the DMZ, and if it gets compromised, I'm sorry. But that doesn't really fix the problem, does it? So just very quickly, 2 things. One, okay, fine, one thing. Contracts. Build IT security into your contracts. Bring your CISO to the table, have them writing down accurate metrics that tells the contractor you will be held responsible for maintaining this system, whether it's hardware, software, or otherwise. We have laws for this. We have standards for this. People like NIST exist for a reason. There is secure coding for a reason. Well, why aren't we actually building this into our contracts? And again, if I could just tie into what I said earlier, we don't have to have this happen at every single organization. We can have one organization, perhaps even GSA. We're very good at doing contracts. Set standards for what secure computing is going to be, so when we hire contractors and we have a reasonable expectation that they're going to come in and do a great job.
Yeah, and I think one of our critical roles is to push our vendors with where we're going. I mean, the reason we have FedRAMP clouds now is that the government stood up and said we want more than what's in the commercial cloud. Now what we have to do is get there, and part of the bolt-on systems that I'm seeing are exactly what you highlighted. You have a system that's like 30 versions behind on Java, and you know the security risks, but nobody can touch it because, quote unquote, it'll break. Well, the hackers can find a way to make it break. You just have to jump in and do it. What I've done in my time back in the federal government is I've pushed that the best security posture is for us to simplify what we're doing. So for example, a PIV card third-party software, if it's built into Windows 10, eliminate that third-party software. You're eliminating another product to patch, another attack vector, and you're simplifying what you're looking at. So wherever you can do that, I believe you should make things simpler so you can make them more secure. And then definitely we need the cyber hygiene language in our contracts. We need to hold our contractors available, and we need to let the industry know what we're looking for. I don't like the fact that the FedRAMP clouds are months behind on features with the commercial clouds, because again, it's something that I'd like to see them invest more and shorten that window so that we know what functions are coming. And then last thing I'm doing is I'm trying to get out of buying hardware ever again. I want to make it available where it's a service, either a cloud, networked as a service, where I don't own the equipment, and part of the contract language is that the security patching and maintenance of it is up to date all the time, or there's severe penalties. Those are things that I don't see us doing as government workers well. I don't think any of us can build a cloud as good as Microsoft or Amazon or Google, even with an unlimited checkbook. Let's let the big industry, let them do what they excel at, but then let's leverage it. And like I said, be vocal. Let them know what we need that's different from a federal government perspective.
Thanks. You're talking about PIV cards. I want to talk a little bit about the broader topic of identity, particularly because when I look at our session title, it's focusing on insider threats and external adversaries. And when you look at what are arguably the 4 most significant breaches that have impacted Washington over the last 6 years, Chelsea Manning, Edward Snowden, OPM, and the DNC, all had a common theme, which was that identity was the vector of attack in every one of these breaches. Hey, welcome. My panel's continuing to grow. This is great. So identity is the vector of attack. In some cases, it was a stolen password, OPM or the DNC. In other cases, that was exploited by an external adversary. But in other cases, it was a legitimately credentialed insider doing things with a credential the government had issued them that they should have never been able to do. So given the impact of these 4 breaches, I'd like to get, take from the panel, are you seeing more focus around improving cyber identity hygiene? What have you as promising there? And then in areas of, where we need to do more work, I know, Guy, you were talking before about people trying to jam software made for Windows XP onto a Windows 10 platform. Where are we winning here, and where do we really need to focus over the next few years?
Sure. Like I said, I know, working from the industry standpoint, the latest versions of their software are their most hardened platforms. So again, that's something we should do there. All of you running Windows 7, if you're on a Microsoft Enterprise Agreement, you already run Windows 10. And if I'm Congress asking you why you got hacked, I'm going to ask you, why didn't you install it? You owned it. And same thing with Cisco patches and Java patches. So I think it's something that we step forward and we have to lead to make these changes, to force our organizations to change. And you see we're only in 5 minutes, so I'll let the rest of the panel go.
No, please.
Okay, so I think to that, one of the most significant things we've done in the last couple of years was the cyber sprint 2 summers ago, which kind of got the government off the dime on 2-factor authentication, at least for administrative accounts. A very critical step. I think this has got to continue. The last administration made a big effort to drive this into the private sector to get the social media to begin to use these technologies and to spread this stuff as a means of containing the types of attacks that we're facing and will continue to face as identity continues to get stolen. I think the next step, the most promising thing, is going to be non-credential based identities used as authentication means. This is being, the Pentagon is looking into this. There are major private sector corporations, Aetna and others, are beginning to use this for access to PHP, PHI data. So I think this is where we're going to be going, and that the last point is one of the most effective things about that sprint that the administration did was give a very simple, clear, and straightforward goal for the government to act. It wasn't 42 different things that you had to report on and check off a matrix and send up to your management. It was one thing and do it. And if we can move along those lines, I think we can begin to make, or continue to make progress. Keep it simple and keep it moving.
Thanks.
I've got a mic, thanks. I'll just add on to that with a bit of an anecdotal story. At VA, well, as you well know, HSPD 12's been around for well over a decade, so we should have been well on our way with PIV. At VA, we were only at about 11% within about a year ago. Our CIO made a personal commitment to get us PIV compliant, and within the course of a year, she got us up to, we are currently at 86% within the VA. And as you may or may not know, VA's the largest civilian cabinet level entity in the government. So it's a big enterprise, and it's very complex because of our medical provider outfit. So if we can get there and make such huge progress, anybody can get there. And what I'll tell you, and one last thing, both at DoD and VA, what made the difference was when we got, as I mentioned earlier, senior level commitment that we were not going to accept risk in this area again, and that we reported our numbers to the CIO and to the secretary at both the DoD and VA on a weekly basis of how we were in getting to those targets. So we really need our senior leaders to commit and really press our agencies to get there.
Man, after these, it stinks being the last guy, right? All your great ideas are gone. I think it's a really good time right now. There's a lot of great initiatives that are coming around that are maturing in a very good way, right? So we have the cloud computing, we have the GovCloud. We're beginning to leverage this very highly. We have FICAM. We have various initiatives. CDM is a fantastic, thank you so much, John, for bringing that up. And we can continue maturing those. If I could potentially just throw one in there in the future, I would, again, enterprise as a service. I think that's untapped, and I think that's somewhere we can go. But But I'd just like to lay one thing on the table while I have this audience, right? Forbes just ran an article a week or so ago, and the title was, "There are literally 1 million cybersecurity jobs that are open right now." So if you think technology is going to save you, my humble question to you would be, and who exactly is going to implement and run that? With over 1 million jobs available, the people who you have on staff, your star players, are going to be absolutely tempted by incredibly large salaries at other places who are competing with you. What are you doing to foster new and innovative talent in your workspaces, and what can we do from a larger public sector perspective in order to help our organizations fill that vacuum? If we are not addressing the human factor, all the technology in the world is not going to help us.
Thanks. Well, I've got a whole bunch more questions, and I really like where you're starting to go with CDM, looking at beyond strong authentication. How do we put other controls in place to actually manage what people do with credentials? But I'm getting a cut off from the nice lady in the back. So with that, I'd love to thank our panel, which doubled in size since we started. Always good mark if people are interested and want to join.